a year where we have the sidewalks ground down, shaved down, where it's about an inch, inch and a half, maybe 2 inches. And so where there are tripping hazards, we'll identify certain areas of the city and have those ground down. And so if you regularly walk around town, you'll notice those. And so that's just steadily happens year to year. And this year we managed to get East Cotati Avenue all the way from Old Redwood Highway, I think, up close to LaSalle, for our budget this year. So we've got different approaches, different angles of attack on the sidewalks. Obviously, if there's a displacement more than 2 inches, then it requires demolition of that said piece of concrete and repouring it. And so we will lean heavily on the businesses and the adjacent residential property owners to go ahead and make those fixes when it comes to our attention. Another linkage here is with utility companies, primarily PG&E. In 2018, it worked out really well where there were distribution improvements that they were making in the L section, and so they managed, with pushing from us, to get that work done and get out of there before we came along, because that would be very awkward if they came along afterwards. And so we have that year and this year we've sat down with their capital improvements program group and said, hey, how far out in the future can you, here's our CIP, show us yours, and how far out in the future can you tell us? And that's been kind of hit and miss. I mean, we've definitely tried to get the communication lines open, but for example, in front of La Plaza Park, we had a capacity project that PG&E just brought to our attention, despite meeting with them a year and a half ago, that they're going to dig up a side of the roadway there by where the right turn lane is. The plan is to dig that up on our brand new paved street next year. And we try to get them out there earlier, but that was to no avail. So what we do in those instances is, instead of having a small area where they patch it, we have all the way out to the center line and a wider swath, so it looks less of a patch job and more keeps it looking like a newer street. So despite our best efforts, those miscues on utility coordination do happen, but hopefully with our communication and coordination, that'll be less so. Okay. So the next steps are to then, upon following a finding of conformance by this body, is to bring this item to the council for adoption of the pavement preservation CIP, and then staff will roll that the CIP into the citywide CIP, and so the citywide CIP will have a chapter on roadways, on streets, and that'll not only be for preservation, but will widen the scope for enhancements to our roadway network. And then it'll be used to inform the city's annual budget. We will come back to this at least every 2 years, if not annually. But right now, I just want to commit to 2 years. It depends on how much things change. We intend to get these projects done in this way, but budget might, require us to scale back these projects as needed. So changes do happen. So with that concludes my presentation. I'm just ending here with the recommendation before you tonight, which is to adopt a resolution finding the proposed 5-year pavement preservation capital improvements program conforms with the city's general plan. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. It's very good to see really appreciate it being put out there. It helps just be transparent and give us a good view of the detail of what it takes to keep these roads open. So, questions from the Commission?
Mr. Scott, you used a phrase I'm not familiar with, Ceros or Ceros? At the beginning of your presentation, I don't know what that means.
I'm not familiar either. Sorry.
I heard a word, but I'm not sure that's what he said.
What was it relating to?
S-H-E-R-O-S is how I...
Sharrows.
Oh, Sharrows.
Sharrows.
Yeah, sorry about that. You'll recognize them when you see them. When you have a Class 3 bike lane, you have a stencil on the roadway, basically in the travel lane of the cars, where there's not enough room for a dedicated Class 2 bike lane. And so those, because you're sharing the roadway with the vehicles, the nomenclature we use is a sharrow. It's an arrow for a bike, and we just call it sharrows. It's a good question. Thanks for catching me on that. Did you follow? It's just a short-term name for that stencil that is a bike, directing bicycles to use the road and share it with cars.
Thank you.
We have some down Old Redwood Highway, don't we, in the middle of town? We have some examples already around town.
Exactly, through downtown. Thank you.
You got anything?
Questions? I kind of appreciate you mentioning the bundling of work, and I realize that we might not have an exact breakdown, but do you have a sense of, is there long-term savings from bundling work rather than kind of doing spot work here and there, but bringing work together, maybe doing more in 2020 and 2021? It's going to cost us more now, but we'll see that savings later on down the road.
It is kind of a theory, because that's going to save money. It definitely saves in headaches and hassles in managing a project. And to the extent we do that, we find we get more bids because the project is more attractive to contractors. And so anytime we can look to make a project more constructible like that, it's helping the contractor to be more efficient. And I think that the idea is that savings is going to come back to us.
Got it. And then in regard to communication, I'm just curious, do you know what sort of communication we do prior to kind of this extensive road work happening, specifically with the residents in the area? I know we've had a lot of road work kind of in our hub of our neighborhood, so I'm just curious if it's letters or robocalls or what sort of things we have factored in there. And I realize those also come at a cost.
Sure, we have requirements in the specifications. That's basically a contract we have with the contractors, where the contractor has to put out a message to the residents a week ahead of time. And if anything happens to the construction schedule, it slides or moves up, those letters have to be revised and sent out, and they're door hangers. We'll go through and do it that way. And then to the extent that it interferes with sort of traffic moving through the city or within the city, you'll see the Nixle alerts go out, and then communication on our websites. But yeah, there'll be door hangers, and then our inspector is out there walking along there and is available to residents. And so that's a very commonplace for a resident to come out and need to get their car out of the driveway to go somewhere. And so even if the construction's happening right in front of that house, they'll hold back to the extent they can and maybe put a little ramp at that. I've seen that happen, just so that resident can get out of the house at that time. So there is some flexibility there to make it work.
Okay, thank you.
I had a question about the costs and wanted to know if included in those costs was any kind of calculation for construction costs going up, like cost of living, or I'm not sure exactly what what that would be, but is that part of that modeling, that software that you use?
These are all in present-day dollars, so when we come back and revisit it, we would have to revisit the cost, put an adjustment on there for inflation. Any like this year's project cost, we could go look and see if the prices have jumped, if they've gone down, what's going on. So they're really just good for near term. And the unit costs are in the appendix. I think Appendix B. If you're interested in looking into that further, on page 39, you'll see the unit cost, the cost per square yard for the different treatments.
I have a question. So I'm just curious, looking at all the slurry seals and all the, the different dig outs and overlays and things that we've had to do. In the past, a lot of these streets, are we continuing, like, I want to say like L section and the Bird section and over by Han and those areas? When was the last time we actually did any work over there? Is this something like, has it been 20 years? Has it been 30 years? Has anybody done like just even, I'm just curious because I think some of these roads, like I saw Gilman on here and I'm thinking that's fairly new. And I know slurry seal helps the roadway, but it seemed like that's a kind of a new area. So I'm just curious, I know somebody goes out and walks it all, but.
Right, so that's the Holiday subdivision, the L section, and it was, when we pull the improvement plans, it was built in the 70s.
72.
I don't think anything was done to those roadways in that amount of time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it does take some, strategizing to really just get yourself to support slurry sealing good streets.
Mm-hmm.
But that's ultimately where we want to get to, because then we're just doing really inexpensive treatments, probably a fifth of the cost of what we're having to do now, and then that's all we have to do. If we can keep it in the 70 range or above, so it's a lot more affordable and feasible to just sustain that.
I had one other question too. So when East Cotati was done a while back, obviously it didn't take. There was big patches that were all the way through during the first rain or something. I mean, so I'm just curious, are we using that same contractor? Or is that a different contractor? Or, I mean... I know that's probably council.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, it just seemed like it's,
Yeah.
that was very poor work that was done on East Cotati Avenue. And I think when we spend that kind of money, I mean, looking at millions of dollars, it seems like that should be part of the plan.
I can say that the treatment we did there was pretty inexpensive. We just did some dig outs, which are, failed sections, which were pretty isolated. And we did crack sealing, which is everywhere you saw a crack. And there were linear cracks that almost ran the length of East Cotati Avenue. Mm-hmm. And so that's fairly inexpensive to do those. And then we just did a slurry seal on top of it. And so that was, where we're taking advantage of a street before it gets to be really in poor condition. And so I think if you've driven out there yesterday, today, it looks like a new street, and so we've sealed it up, and it's got complete coverage on it, and hopefully that's going to add another 5, 6, 7 years worth of life before we have to do something else to it, another slurry seal, for example. So we, hopefully we caught it in time.
Okay. Those are my questions.
Thank you. So we also have a sewer plan, and that has talked about doing some bypasses. Can you say, is this going to be in, when is that likely? Or, I mean, are we out of, because I've asked this question before, and there was a plan at one point, and then it won't be in the life of this road, and particularly Old Redwood Highway and the Laguna, I guess, a bypass.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. We have sewer projects planned for William, Olaf, and West Sierra Avenue, which is in the first year of our plan. And so we are looking to get those designed and built before we're out there paving next summer. Only one of those stretches is an open cut pipe, because it's going from, I think, an 8 to a 12-inch diameter pipeline, but the others are smaller increments, I think 6 to an 8, and so that can be done by trenchless technology, by busting the pipe bursting, and so we're not so concerned about, that can happen after the street's paved, because then we don't have to dig up the roadway. So we're looking at the open cut, which I think is on William, and getting out ahead of it before the roadway.
Good. So the goal is still not to dig up within what period of time if there's new treatment done on it?
It's actually in our municipal code, 5 years. There's a 5-year moratorium, and there's some exceptions, emergencies, so mission critical type expansions that might need to happen.
Good. Good to hear that. So the other area on the pedestrian side, and particularly there's been a lot of thinking on that, safe routes to schools. Does that get impacted with being able to provide, I mean, I know the road is being looked at, but is there any benefit to pedestrians in that area? Which I think would be the West School Street.
Oh,
because we have a plan on
yeah,
the safe routes to
the city's been working, staff's been working on that for quite some time with a survey that was done maybe 5 years ago on the route from the tunnel all the way out to Richardson Lane, and we're using the Community Development Block Grants, the CDBG funds, to do that over a period of 10 years plus. It's real slow going, and we're not, because the objective of this program is to preserve pavement.
Mm-hmm.
It's sadly not something we're looking at in this scope.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a fair question when we come back with the larger scope for the citywide CIP. If the city decides to use some of its own funding to move those safe, to school pathways,
Because you're
instead
doing
of
a
just
complete
relying on the CDBG funds, which trickle in.
right, because you're doing a complete rebuild in FDR, the full depth reclaim of those. So is there any benefit to that? Doesn't include a sidewalk or safe area for?
No. There's that pathway, as you know, is it's kind of nice. It's its own separate pathway off the street, so it's a Class 1 pathway, and so there's right-of-way acquisition issues there, and trees and fences that need to be relocated. But it's a little more involved than just a paving project where you just go there, repave it, which is simpler because it's the extent.
Yeah, because I mean, I personally feel we're just really not looking at a lot of safety issues, and I mean, I think it's a long-term project. You see better safety issues down in Berkeley for speeding vehicles and ways of being able to better manage it. So it just seems like coming in at this stage and rebuilding a road completely, that if we had some areas, I mean, it's a very expensive process. So anyway, that's just the drum I keep banging, And everybody I talk to, it's always about safety. If we want to get people out of vehicles, reduce our vehicle miles traveled and stuff. So anyway, I'm banging that drum.
Yeah.
You know, lots of examples around, I think, of where we could do better and we could just prevent a lot of, I mean, we get people complaining about speeding vehicles, and I realize it's a pavement restoration. We're really trying to do that, but it seems like it would be good to think about that side as well, I mean, in the planning side. On the bicycling as well, how, I mean, there's an old version of striping for bicyclists, and some of the junctions are definitely not very safe. So moving, we don't really have any perspective in this plan about where there could be improvements on striping, and particularly what I'm thinking of is the old way of doing it was you had the, coming up to a junction, if you've got 5 lanes, and you have a bicycle lane running down the right, class 2 bicycling lane. I mean, turning right there and conflicts with vehicles at that point, also turning right, as opposed to moving the bicycle lane into the middle or letting there be a vehicle turn right lane. Are we doing anything with that and getting better analysis in the striping portion?
You will see with this year's project, the East Cotati Avenue and Old Redwood Highway, there'll be the green bike lanes will be put down there, and then with the Old Redwood Highway, the downtown revitalization project that was finished a few years ago, it's just like that. We saw it, Gravenstein Way, the green bike lane, Caltrans green, you know. So we do bring up the striping to current standards, and which are improving over time. Where before it would just be 2 white stripes, there's now the green with the sharrows, well, not the sharrows, but the bike stencil.
The bike stencils there, yeah, and I mean that makes a big difference, I think. To drivers, just to indicate where people are on that. And then the other question I had, looking at the round the plaza, I'm assuming that with the map, you're showing that it goes all the way around the plaza, but there's portions of that road that have already been done. So I'm assuming you're not going over a road when you actually say, like Charles Street to George Street to Henry Street, you're stopping at the Old Redwood Highway, and because on the map you just show it as a circle. On that sort of map.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's just a casualty of the scale.
casual scale.
Yeah.
And so on that question also, there is a park at Arthur Street and East Cotati Avenue, so there's about 40 feet that is not part of, does that stop there? Is the park maintained? You've got Arthur Street, I guess it's line number 7 down. You've got Arthur Street.
No, sorry. That gets worked out more in the design phase. This is more of the segment in, the segment out type of thing. What treatment are we applying? And then I think as we drill into it, what does that mean on a set of plans? You know, how do we, you know, handle this park? Where does the extent of the pavement? We would not be repaving East Cotati Avenue in that section. We would not be paving Old Redwood Highway or redoing those herringbone crosswalks, you know, treatment at those locations. So those are more details that come out in the design phase.
Okay, and the same with the Arthur Street, the East Cotati Avenue.
Yes.
That stops before it gets to the park.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. No, I really enjoy the new paving. I actually watched the walking section and how they did it, and talked to the supervisor, watched them how they were putting it down,
Yes.
and almost using a big hot iron to layer it down on the road, and then a stamping press afterwards. And I mean, you look at it and it looks like some brickwork, I guess, but it's quieter. And providing it holds up, I mean, looks very good.
It's meant to last, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, I guess that's the experts, and they have to do that. I think that's the extent of my questions. Has anybody else got any more questions?
I just have one more. So you have Maple Avenue to Richardson Street on page 1. Does that mean all of Richardson Street is going to get paved?
None of Richardson Street will get paved. in
So
this 5-year
the
program.
beginning, it goes to the beginning of Richardson Street.
Right, the West School Street would just end at Richardson, yeah.
Why? Why is Richardson, I mean, that's a street that really is a pathway to the kids riding their bikes or walking to school.
We have about $200,000 of CDBG money that's available now, and in a plan that's been approved, and CEQA and NEPA has been completed to extend the West School Street pathway from West School Street where it ends, that asphalt path all the way across West School Street, over a culvert, and then down about 600 feet of Richardson Lane. And so we're hoping to address it with that project. It's slow going because of all the requirements of the funding, but we hope to get the children off of Richardson Lane
Yeah,
that way.
okay, thank you.
Well, I'll open this up for public comment. If anybody's got any comment they'd like to make on this project. Seeing nobody, I'll close public comment and bringing it back to the Planning Commission. And I think we're ready for a motion. Anybody got any more discussion or questions or discussion internally? I mean, I very much like that we've got the project here. We've got it visible. I think it's a benefit. It's a lot of hard work, I know, to make it so that it's transparent. And
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a comment and then make the motion. I think that having that state-supplied or paid for software is incredible, that we have that tool to use, and I think that's a huge asset to the community to be able to do it, laid out the way that you've done it. It's great. So I'd like to make the motion that the resolution of the Planning Commission of the City of Cotati finding the proposed fiscal year 2020 through 2024 pavement preservation capital improvement program in conformity with the City of Cotati general plan.
And do I have a second?
I'll second.
And following the rules, reading up on the rules, we can now, has anybody got any comments on that motion and the second? I didn't realize we could actually make more motions, and in fact, we could have 3 motions on. I don't want to actually manage that at all. But no more comments at all? Okay, can I call for a roll call, please?
Commissioner O'Nines?
Yes?
Commissioner McKinney?
Yes.
Chair Hancock?
Yes.
Vice Chair Whipple?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Very, very good presentation. Appreciate it. So now you're let off the hook there. We can go into the next layer of new areas for the Planning Commission. So the next item, item number 2, Planning Commission review and consideration of draft bylaws governing meeting and commission protocols.
Thank you, Chair Hancock and Commissioners. The item before you this evening is essentially an opportunity to review a set of draft Planning Commission bylaws. Currently, the Planning Commission is governed by 2 separate policy documents, the Municipal Code.
Planning Commission review and consideration of draft bylaws governing meeting and
Little feedback, but we're governed by Municipal Code Chapter 2.16, Commissioners. The item before you this evening is essentially an opportunity to review a set of draft Planning Commission bylaws. Currently, the Planning Commission is governed by 2 separate policy documents, the Municipal Code. So I'll keep going and we'll see which way this goes. You might have to listen to me twice. And then the rules of conduct that are adopted by the City Council. Both of those are provided for you in the packets. This is somewhat of a housekeeping item in that the Municipal Code identifies that the Commission is intended or shall adopt rules for the transaction of business. However, no record of such rules having been adopted has been found by city staff, and so in an effort to try to catch us up and be able to,
It's definitely where I advise pulling it back.
municipal code identifies that the commission
I guess
is intended or shall
we
adopt
will,
rules for the transaction.
shall we take a pause
However,
for
no record
5
of such
minutes?
rules have been
While we do that,
adopted
so,
or found by city staff, so in an effort to try to catch us up and be
it's definitely where I advise pulling it back.
municipal code identifies that the commission is intended or shall
We will,
adopt rules for the transaction.
shall we take a pause? There was some language in here. I'll have to read that one again. Welcome to session after we adjourn. So we're back in session, and if staff would like to continue.
Sure, thank you, and we'll
Thank
try
you.
and
Thank you very much, Kerry.
So as I was mentioning, the commission is directed by the municipal code to adopt rules for transaction of business. We don't have a current record of such rules having been adopted, and so staff took the opportunity, kind of during a lull in our schedule, to prepare a draft set of bylaws for the commission to review. There's
Thank you very much, Kerry.
So as I was mentioning, the commission is directed by the municipal code to adopt rules for transaction of business. We don't have a current record of such rules having been adopted, and so staff took the opportunity, kind of during a lull in our schedule, to prepare a draft set of bylaws for the commission to review. So as I was mentioning, the commission is directed by the municipal code to adopt rules for transaction of business. We don't have a current record of such rules having been